The best coaches out there have suffered, they have wrestled with things, they have overcome challenges both personally but as well with support and help. In my experience in the industry, they're always the best ones. Right? They have deep personal insight on top of professional skills. And when you put those things together, the what, the why, the how, and the human beings behind it, that's when we win.
The first thing we're going to talk about is the what. The thinking brain requires specificity, right? And we really want to talk about measurable targets here and what that means around goal setting. So let's dive in, Michelle. You said the prefrontal cortex needs coordinates. What's the first thing that breaks down in the brain when a woman tries to pursue a vague goal?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges, Michelle, when it comes to goal setting and goal pursuit is that we don't quite understand the neurological framework that's required for us to not only get clear on it from the start, but also go step by step through that process to be able to get from A to Z. So I know we're talking a little bit about the three elements today, the what, the why, and the how, but also the reason behind why that's important. So just as a start, before we jump into what, there are four major reasons in the nervous system why we might not be able to follow through or achieve our goals. The first is our nervous system gets overwhelmed and our brain gets really confused. The second is confusion, that we don't know what to do when, or maybe is in the wrong sequence. The third is that we have a feeling of lack of progress. Maybe it's objective lack of progress, or that we've actually achieved something, but we don't feel like we thought we would. And then the fourth is that we feel a sense of disconnection either from ourselves or the goal, or perhaps if we're working with a coach, we feel disconnected from them. So those four things can absolutely be solved when we understand this three-pillar framework of identifying the what, and then the why, and then the how. I want to check, Michelle, if you want to share on any of those pieces. Let's dive straight into the what after that, and then go through the other two. Have you noticed this with clients before?
Definitely. I think the way that I coach, it handles those things for them. So it's perfect that you're giving away my secrets. You're going in and diving and explaining this to people that are listening. And this is both for clients and coaches, right? From the client side, it's going to help you understand better how you want to be framing your goals. And for coaches, it's going to help you understand what happens when there's like resistance, when there's avoidance, when it feels like your clients are shutting down or they're not all in. So yeah, let's keep going.
Amazing. So the first pillar that we want to look at is the what, and we want to deep dive into the neurological pieces of what that is. So the what really focuses on our thinking brain. That includes something called the prefrontal cortex. I know we've talked about that on previous episodes, Michelle, the PFC, but also the neocortex, which is front center and then wraps around the rest of our brain. And this is the part of our brain that's very rational. It's very logical. It's language-based, and in order for it to be fully engaged and involved, we need a really clear marker and a target of where it is we're going. So what is the goal? That's the question we want to ask. And when we define this, the what is, one example might be, I want to lose 5 kilos within, let's say, 4 months. That's just a random example. Or
Smart
maybe,
goals.
I want to squat double my body weight within the next 18 months. Whatever the goal is, we need it to be very specific, something that we can write down, and also something, and here's the kicker, that it needs to be objective. So what do we mean by that? And I'd love to hear your take on this too, Michelle. When we define the what, it has to be numerical. That
measurable.
When you look at
has to be
kilos,
measurable. Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at 100 kilos on the bar and I look at 100 kilos on the bar, we get the same result. It is equal, and we both understand that that's the thing. So the what and the part of our brain that needs to be involved, the rational part, the problem-solving part that we need to be engaging in that process, what are we going to do? In what time frame? And what is the thing? What is the metric? What is the metric that's going to tell us that we have achieved that goal? That's the first component. What do you have to say about that, Michelle?
Oh, you're hitting the nail on the head from my perspective as an evidence-based coach. I mean, this is how it's got to be for sure. And yet this can be one of the hardest things for coaches and clients to to follow through on, right? Because when challenges happen, how do we hold ourselves accountable and keep coaching that thing? And I'd like to ask you about that, women can really avoid that specificity probably because it exposes commitment, right? So what does the brain do with avoidance? What's happening there? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. And again, these three components, when they're working together, the what, the why, and the how, this is one of the things that can help mitigate the triggers that cause us to pull back, disengage, be evasive, right? When we're overwhelmed, confused, feel a lack of progress or disconnection, those are the things that trigger off avoidance as one example. So when we get clear on what, that's just one of the three pillars, but when we are clear on the what we start to be able to do is build the resources in a coaching environment or personal environment to start to identify where are we now in comparison to what the target is. Are we at A and we want to get to Z? Are we at C and we want to get to Z? We need to be able to compare where we are to where we want to go and have specific metrics around that. So when we start to see clients maybe move away from that or be unsure if they want to commit to that, it's guaranteed that it's going to be overwhelm, confusion, lack of progress, or disconnection that's in the room. So getting really clear on what is the first foundation to be able to prevent those things from happening. Of course, we need the other two as well.
Love that. So you talk about the stranger test, right? For checking clarity. Can you walk us through a case where this stranger test instantly dissolved confusion?
Yes, meaning how it might be applied to a client, what it would sound like or look like. Yeah, so a really great example. Let's just go 5 kilos in 4 months. A client comes to you and says, this is what I would like to do. I'd like to lose some body fat or I'd like to lose some weight. The job of the coach and the coaching process to be able to get clarity on the what is to identify what is the metric. So instead of just going vague and saying, I want to lose weight, the problem with that is we don't know how to measure progress. We don't know if we're moving towards it. We don't know if we're moving away from it. It's so vague and undefinable that even if we are succeeding in that process, there's no way for a coach or a client to go, we're very clear that what we're doing is working. We're very clear that what we're doing feels good and it feels like we're achieving what we needed. So we start with so much ambiguity in the absence of what, that there's no way for us to win. So neurologically, we need that part of the brain online. But if we were to do a case study, it's simple as what is the metric that we are trying to achieve? Could be performance-based, could be aesthetic-based, doesn't really matter as long as it's a metric and it's important to them. We'll talk about the why in a sec, and that needs to be written down and we need to evaluate where are we in relation to that. Have we lost 1 kilo and we have 4 to go? Have we improved and added 15 kilos to the bar and we've got 40 more to go? These are the metrics that allow us to go, where are we on the rungs of the ladder? And do we need to tweak and change the process in reference to that to get a better result, faster result? Maybe we need to slow down or problem solve what's missing.
And so I imagine with the stranger test is, somebody that doesn't know you and is not invested in your happiness or your success. If you explain to them what that goal was, they would be able to understand what it was you were doing and how close or far you are from achieving that goal, or that you've achieved the goal. Like, oh yeah, you did the thing, right?
Yeah, from a neurological perspective, Michelle, and for anyone listening, if one of the biggest barriers to goal achievement is that we don't know we're making progress, it may be our coach does, or somebody else can give us feedback and go, you look great, or you're doing awesome. But internally, we need these really strong feedback loops to go, I put in an effort, I got a return, and therefore I get more back than I've invested, right? We look at it like a bank account. Are we putting in a credit or is it a debit? And one of the biggest risks, if we don't have a clear what, i.e. a metric, a specific numerical metric, and then also a timeline to that, is that we go, I'm putting this money in and I'm putting this effort in, but I can't actually see whether or not that's giving a return. And therefore, we are guaranteed to feel at some point in any season of our life that it's not valuable, it's not working, and our emotions tend to run the show. So these become the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, to go, even if I'm feeling a little unsure about whether or not I'm progressing and this is valuable effort or valuable investment, I can look at external concrete data to let me know I am definitely on track. Or I'm not on track, and therefore we start to problem solve what might be missing so we can get back on track.
I was literally talking about walking a client through decision making, like two different clients for two different things. I like to educate. I like to be very collaborative in my coaching. So I talked a lot about why we would do this now versus later and the things that we're looking out for, and then what success looks like. And to also normalize recalibrating, right? If we go so far and this happens, hey, we just recalibrate and that's okay. And let's normalize that. So it's a big part of successful coaching, for sure. I got another question for you. So when someone insists they're confused about the plan, in your opinion, in your experience, because you coach a lot of great coaches, coaching teams, and you also yourself coach great high performance athletes, what percentage of that confusion would you chalk up to a missing target, right, versus a genuine strategy problem?
Great question, Michelle. In my sense of things, it's going to be case by case basis. So what is one component, but it doesn't work in and of itself? If we're missing the why and missing the how, which is generated from the first two, then none of them work. So ultimately, and this is in Neuroscience of Coaching, but then as well, working with like you said, high performance athletes in different ways over time, you have to have all three for any of them to work effectively. So I don't know that it's necessarily a percentage of how many fall off because the what is missing. It would be more 100% of cases fall off when at least one of those is missing. We need all three to engage immediately over the long term, and then also to get the internal and external feeling that clients are really looking for over.
And then I guess
lifetime.
when you notice there's that fall off, and obviously you want some kind of a system. I'm a big systems gal, and I'm sure you're a big systems gal. Like when that is flagged that there's some fall off happening, then you have that. Those three elements to review. Like, is it a what problem? Is it a how problem? Or is it a why problem? Love that. So when you assess goal setting in founders like me or athletes, what signal tells you their cognitive load is already too high before the work even begins? You're like, you're just in survival mode and you have to shift gears.
Interesting question, Michelle. I assume everyone's in survival mode before I work with them because I've yet to meet anyone.
They wouldn't be coming to you if they weren't in survival mode.
I've yet to meet anyone that's not in some form of survival mode. And in fairness, we're built for that, right? The rhythm of our culture, the demands of our culture.
Oh
how
my
much
God, it's
information is
getting
coming
crazier.
Yeah, it's almost guaranteed we're going to be in survival mode. So instead of what are the chances they're going to be, I'm assuming that they are. We do really extensive work in the neuroscience of coaching of supporting coaches and companies working with people at high volume to help pre-handle and mitigate the likelihood survival states are going to show up, but then also using this framework to tidy up and to buffer out the risk around this. So assume everybody's in a survival state because most spaces and most systems are not pre-handling these things. My answer to you would be 100%. That's my assumption.
All the signals. All the signals. Okay, then let's go into, and I certainly wouldn't disagree, and certainly with my avatar, which is that midlife woman, it's myself, right? Like holding the fort down at all levels in all directions for everybody and everything. It's so easy to be, I say that I'm highly functional in my sympathetic nervous system, but there's always that one thing, that straw that breaks the camel's back, and just trying to control the environment for that. So then what's the one refinement you wish, and I'm going to be interested what you would say versus me as a coach of coaches, right? What's the one refinement you wish more coaches at this stage would do to set clients up for success?
Improve their communication skills. Communication is everything. So communication system and communication skills. Listen to my voice when I say that. There was no budging on this one. There are.
But what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
Yes, there
So
are a
you've
number
got
of
people,
coaches out
yeah,
there.
sorry.
Yep, a number of coaches out there who have plenty of information. They're pretty darn good or excellent at diagnostics and prescription of knowing what to program, maybe how to program, what's happening with nutrition and training. There's plenty of information out there, and most coaches can do a pretty good job at that. However, one of the biggest precursors, in my humble opinion, the biggest precursor is you can have a great program, and if your client doesn't engage, and your client doesn't respond to your messages, this isn't just clients, it might be employees, it might be people you work with in a different realm. But if people don't engage and people don't interact with you, it really doesn't matter how good your program is, because they don't do it and they're not able to follow through. So I know in the fitness industry and the coaching industry, there's a tremendous amount of emphasis on high quality prescription and diagnostics. That's great, knowing and having the skills to help people do the right things. But the missing piece, communication system and communication skills, how we engage with them as a human, right from the start, to give the highest chance that they are open to practice, engage with, ask for help, give feedback, take on feedback. If we don't have that human piece, all of it doesn't work. So number one is communication skills, how we engage with people under stress, when they're doing really well, communication systems to move them from survival mode into growth and practicing habits and skills. And there's absolutely a system around that. That's what we do in Neuroscience of Coaching, because it was the biggest gap in the industry.
I'm going to tease that out a little bit. I know, and I want to get to the why, but this is something that I rattle through in my mind quite a bit, because I have a lot of clients that work with me for a very, very long time, and usually it's only when I have to pull back from coaching, which has been the case the last couple of years, as running the business has just grown and grown and grown. And I really want to give great service. So if I feel like I can no longer do that, I'll see if I can place them with another coach in my community. And so, I work with so many clients for such a long time. And I said this to my husband, I've never said no to a client. Like when somebody applies and if I have space, I'm incredibly inclusive, right? Like I've never had to say, no, I don't think it's going to be a good fit. And I work with clients both for lifestyle transformation and then that more performative athlete stream. So I think to myself, like, what is it that I'm doing when I'm doing what I do? How am I able to do the magic? And how can I teach that to other coaches, right? And so one of the things that I think I do, and it's probably through the years, and you'll probably have insight on this, is I'm really able to meet the client where they are without dumbing things down. And so I might say, like, what is the one win? If this client seems overwhelmed, and it's pretty easy to tell, then how can I get a win? And a lot of times, and this goes back to my early years, like when a client would apply, my macros was totally new. So I really had to teach them everything from the beginning. We didn't have the internet and YouTube wasn't what it was today. So I really had to do all the lifting. And I used to ask people, I knew the overwhelm was the meal planning. So I used to say, okay, give me your 4 this, your 5 this. And so I would do that with like their food ingredients. I said, look in the fridge. What is the food you like to eat? Let's narrow it down. And then I would actually write a meal plan for them based on their foods. I would open my app and I would write it all down and go, this is what 150 grams of protein, 180 grams of carbs, and 50 grams of fat would look like. Delicious nutrition hits your macros based on the things that you like. So I would take things off their plate versus, and this can happen with great intention, I think, right? We think, communicate. I got to be a good communicator, Michelle Baty said. And so there's this over communication. And I think, oh, I can see the effort and I can see where the heart is. But I'm like, the last thing they need to do is make another decision. They need less. Less is more.
I love that, Michelle, for 2 reasons. First is what you're speaking to, the what, can be on a macro scale of what is the goal, what's the metric we're aiming to hit, what's our current location, and where are we in reference to that, which we spoke about. But the other is what's happening day to day and week to week. What is the target of our macros? What is the structure of a meal? What is the program that we're going to do? What is the app that we're going to use, right? That's activating the same part of the brain, still centralizing around the what. The other piece that you speak to around communication, and I'm glad that you brought nuance to this, is we may assume, like you're naming, more communication is better, when in actual fact, communication skills and communication systems are not about more, it's about the right communication at the right time, in the right dose, to focus only on the thing that's required right now.
Oh my
nothing
God.
more, nothing less.
Yes.
So in that can be one of the biggest gaps. Either coaches or clients may receive this or even overwhelm themselves with ChatGPT and too much information.
Oh, ChatGPT is, yes, it's a dangerous stance. Yes.
Yeah, it's either too little and it's just the what, and we're going to talk about the why and the how in a moment, or it's way too much and it's very confusing for someone to identify what's the thing I need to focus on right now. What's the target that I'm trying to hit right now? So communication skills and communication systems are to be able to identify what level is a client, what is the need they have, what is the goal they have, and what is the pace and dose of communication that I can provide to them to make sure that we hit the mark only on that and nothing else.
Brilliant.
And as that progresses, we then shift and change. And as that progresses, we shift and change.
Love that. So just to underline, and I'm sure people heard that listening, but I want to underline that even for myself, that there's an incredible amount of growth that has to happen in the coach, right? To be able to do all of that. And if you're on a one-on-one call, like on a dime, right? To be able to recalibrate, especially if you're going in there with these strategies and things you want the client to do and the questions you want to ask and tease out. And you might have to just very rapidly pull back and say, this is the one thing I need to make sure they walk away with. And it's got to be a win. And I got to be able to hold them accountable to it in a way that doesn't overwhelm them. They have to feel that win, right? Quick win, we like to call them in business. I'm having a wow moment because I'm onboarding a new somebody new to the team, and I'm just realizing that I've overwhelmed them because, and it's that confusion. And I'm struggling to transfer my knowledge from coaching to the business world, but they transfer, and I'm sure you know that, but it's always like it's learning a new thing, right? But I'm hearing, I need more information to understand this thing, but then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be available for 24 hours, so I'm just going to give them like all these things, right? And then I'm hearing, well, that's too overwhelming, and I'm paralyzed. So I've got to understand, like, they have to be overwhelmed because they're new, and then so two. And the stakes are high. What is it that I need to tell them so that they can move to the next thing and we can start to build that confidence that they understand the role and the requirements and they can start contributing and having impact in the company? Probably something like that, right? Whew.
Spot on, Michelle. And again, a lot of the time when coaches have been in the industry for a long time, there is an embedded pattern recognition, and still there's going to be gaps, but there's a lot of pattern recognition that they may be doing things that they don't even know that they're doing. So what I've noticed, even as you reflect that back, is these are all what questions. What is the goal of this conversation I'm having with them? What is the goal they have in long term? What is the problem that they name, saying, I need more information, but what's underneath that? What do I need to share with them? What do I do not need to share with them? This is how we get clarity on the single piece that we need to deliver wrapped up in communication systems and communication skills. Okay, let's talk about the why.
Let's go to the why. Yeah.
The why is great, but it's just not enough. It's not enough. Do you want to kick that one off, or do you want me to roll right into it?
Yeah, like roll right into it. Let's talk about the why. I know you talk about the push-pull neurochemistry. Yeah. I love push-pull, so dive in. Lead us.
Yeah, so we have the what that's there. What's the goal? What's our location in reference to it? What are the things that we need to do in order to get there? That's great. That gives us an external construct to measure ourselves against, but it doesn't necessarily have meaning or purpose. And this can be one of the pieces if we don't get it right. On its own, it's still not enough, but if we don't get it right, we are simply robots going through a process for no reason. And what we know about the nervous system is if it doesn't hold meaning and it doesn't have purpose, or we are not aware of that purpose, if it's not embedded and embodied, the nervous system will deprioritize it. There are so many things that we could be focusing on, an infinite amount of information that we are processing at any given time, which means we've got these inbuilt mechanisms in our nervous system to say, this is more important than this. And the way it does that is through neuromodulators. There are two neuromodulators that are really important in terms of this question of the why, which is talked a lot about in the industry. One is we need to have adrenaline in the room. Adrenaline is your amygdala. That's in the midbrain. It's the part of the brain that just triggers off a little bit of discomfort. We don't want too much, but a little bit of discomfort to go, there is a consequence to me staying the same. If it's too much, it paralyzes us. It's going to shut us down, but just enough for us to go, there's a consequence to me not taking action on this. And bringing awareness to it, that's going to bring adrenaline up, and adrenaline is energy. If we're engaging in a goal pursuit, if we're engaging in skill development, if we're engaging in a process and a pathway to become different, even if it's over the long term and step by step, our nervous system needs energy. And adrenaline is one of those things. So this is what we call the push. This is the thing that if we don't change, there is a consequence to it, and we don't really want that consequence. A little bit of amygdala, a little bit of adrenaline, we get some inertia. It's like the engine of the car. We need the engine on in order for us to go somewhere. So that's the first piece. What's the thing that we don't want to continue? And what would happen if it did continue? That brings adrenaline. The second piece is the pull. This is the thing that we want to move towards. It's the desire, the pleasure seeking, who we want to be, how we want to be. And this is associated with dopamine, which is the anticipation neuromodulator. This here is like the direction of where we're going. We got the engine, and now we've got a direction. If we just have an engine of a car that's going anywhere, we don't know where we're going to end up. So dopamine, or that pull, that desire, this is our imagination of, I would like to be this person. I imagine myself as this person. I see someone else with these qualities, and I really identify with those, and I want to learn how to get there because that's meaningful to my sense of values, to the people around me, the people I'm modeling for. That's where we get purpose. So meaning and purpose is, if I don't change, this is the consequence, and it's not going to feel very good. We need that adrenaline. And if I do change, and I'm pulled towards this, I get to experience, or imagine myself experiencing, living in my value set, living through my principles, modeling for the people I care about, whatever the meaning and purpose is for you. So this is how we define the why. A lot of the time people might say, because of my kids, or because of my work, or because I want to look like so-and-so on the internet. But if we don't have these neuromodulators active, and we haven't had a chance to go deeper on going, what's the consequence? And what's the desire? What will happen if we get there? We don't have enough energy in the system to be able to hold in the pursuit. So the why really is energy. We can call it motivation, we can call it discipline, we can call it a whole bunch of things that are subjective, but ultimately what we're talking about is energy and inertia to stay the course. It's not what we're doing, it's the energy behind why we're doing it to keep us engaged with something when there's a million distractions and infinite other things that we could be doing.
What happens neurologically when meaning is absent?
When meaning is absent, we don't have adrenaline and we don't have dopamine. Right? When something doesn't mean anything, our amygdala that says, you better get up your butt and go and do something, it's not active. It's not prioritized. When we don't have a desire, or when that desire isn't something that we want, right? Like, what's an example, Michelle? I don't really care about handbags. People pay a lot of money for handbags. I do not care about handbags. That's not something that I desire. It's not something that's meaningful for me, right? And that's not a judgment either way. It's that my dopamine system doesn't become active. However, really great experiences, going to see music, going to see plays, doing travel, that's very meaningful to me. It reminds me of my childhood, reminds me of my family. I love sensory experience. I am highly motivated to make those things happen. So meaning is always going to be associated to how we feel about ourselves, the memories that we have with people we care about, the memories we want to create with the people we care about and who and how we are. And when that meaning isn't there, our system doesn't have a response. It doesn't prioritize. I look at a handbag and I go, it's nice, I guess. But there's no change in my behavior, no change in my motivation or actions I'm going to take to move me towards that thing. Whereas something that is meaningful is going to redirect my whole system, if I'm attuned to it, to start to align my actions to get there.
What's the difference between motivation and meaning?
They're quite similar. They're actually under the same umbrella. So meaning is the thing that's going to bring significance, and that is going to trigger off adrenaline and dopamine. And adrenaline and dopamine is energy, i.e. motivation. So they're on a sliding scale with each other. Meaning is the prerequisite for motivation, which is energy. And those are those two neuromodulators. So it's not enough on its own. And still, if we are simply going through the what, without meaning and purpose, we cannot generate enough energy. We cannot generate small doses of motivation to even get close to this thing that we call discipline or changes in identity.
When somebody says, I lost my motivation, what's usually, in your opinion, what's usually happening in their nervous system?
One of four things: they're overwhelmed, they're confused, there's a lack of progress, or they're disconnected. It's always going to be those four things. And as a coach, or if, and no pressure for anyone listening, of course, this is moving through a system or working with somebody to be able to support you with this. We are built to connect with people, especially with the what, why, and how. We need another system to support us in this if it's beyond our current skill set. So if we're noticing that our motivation dips, what this means without any stigma, we're not saying we don't need it or we do need it. What we're saying is adrenaline and dopamine are not in the room. And it may be a couple of causes. It may be that it's just so overwhelming that the system goes, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to do it. So the system shuts down. It's too expensive for the reward. Or it could be there's a missing component at the beginning of the process where maybe we set our why for somebody else. Maybe it was something we read on the internet or thought sounded good, or we thought it was important to us, but we haven't had a chance to distill down and excavate, why is it actually important? Like, does it actually matter? Or is it something that's just a quick hit and not something that's deeply meaningful? So that process in coaching we want to go through when asking the why, like with some clients, it really works. Right? Because they're so in touch with it. And with other clients, if you ask the why, it's like, it doesn't really kick the system back into gear, right? There's a missing component of awareness around those things, deeply connecting to it and being able to reconnect to it. Most of the time, the nervous system does not know how to, unless it's been a learning process, connect a daily action to a lifelong principle or value. And working with a coach, in contact with them, daily, if you're in a prep, for instance, or weekly or bi-weekly, whatever that process is we're shortening that gap. When I do this thing, I experience this outcome or this metric, good or not so good, that allows me to feel a certain way. And that feeling represents something that's meaningful to me. The person I want to be, how I want to show up, let's go do it again. Or I do a thing, gets me a different outcome, I don't feel as good. I'm maybe not moving towards my principles and values like I named, therefore we want to redirect. Yeah, so it could be that things are quite confusing and we don't know where to go and the system shuts down, or it could be that we haven't got clear and really generated that awesome why, that adrenaline and dopamine, to hold us as we move through things that are challenging.
I think too, there's also, for a lot of us, it's just a skill. Like for me, the best frames are through identity, right? When you can really, and especially if it's a physique athlete trying to achieve a goal, I like to get in there early on and dive into what identity that they're trying to build, because they're gonna go through hard challenges, and you need to get reps in, normalizing failures, normalizing missed reps, missed meal plans, but getting back onto the horse and re-grooving that why. So it's like reps in identity. It's not like this continuous thing that you magically have the moment you go, oh, I know my why. You got to get the reps in, overcoming the failures and the disconnects. So I think there's that one piece. I see you nodding, so you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, and what you're doing so well there, Michelle. On point, send me the bill. We're connecting the what and the why and what you describe. Right? There's the why of this is the meaning behind it, this is the purpose behind it. But then in the coaching process, we go, what is the thing we do? When we do it, what's the meaning, the outcome, and the meaning we get from that? And we do that over and over and over again. And this is where we start to fuse our behaviors and our actions to our sense of identity, where we're getting very deep transformation. So, like we shared at the beginning, if the what is missing, we can't do that. If the why is missing, we can't do that, which means we get these pillars in place and then we start to use them and fuse them together to the point where our nervous system is conditioned. I'm going to go to the gym, maybe not because I love it today, but just because it feels really weird not to now. We're so conditioned, we're so programmed that it becomes a habit. It becomes unconscious, where we start, I love that language, regroove towards that happening more often with less effort and more autopilot until such time that we want to upskill again and level up to something new.
Before we skip on to the how, and I know that's next, I just want to ask you, because you talk about it, the question of, and I guess this is the pull, right? Like, you ask the question, what changes in your life when you achieve this thing? What responses tell you someone has finally got a true north when you ask that question? Do you have a...
I'm mindful because I never expect coaches to have this level of skill. This has been my life's work, assessing, measuring, sensing into nervous systems, micro movements in the face, and what's occurring in the very deep layers of somatics, right? And I don't believe coaches need that level, but there are definitely things that you can pick up in terms of language, in terms of communication. So for instance, if you're working with clients face to face, or even someone listening that's just engaging in their own process, if we ask the question of why is this thing important, and we check in and notice that there's kind of a flatness or like an emptiness or no immediate response or kind of I'm not sure, or like it's an internal sense of grabbing an answer from somebody else, then probably we're not on the mark. Right? From my perspective, Michelle, I'm measuring things like what's happening with facial expression and tone of voice, but that's not so usable for most coaches or most people assessing their own system. So I'd love to hear from you, Michelle. Why do you do what you do? And what do you notice in your system when we ask that? Right? What do you pick up when I ask, why do you do what you do? Why do you coach? You love coaching. You're so good at it. Why do you do it?
I'm addicted to transforming lives. I love it. I feel like a conduit and I can help accelerate and amplify radical outcomes. So I'm like, I have to do it. It's a service. And that wraps into my identity that everything's figure outable. I'm really great at what I do. Women are trained to do hard things, and we got to lead from the front and have that positive ripple effect, right? Rising tides lift all boats. So it's like, it's so easy. It's just like I'm addicted to it. I want to do more of it. And I created TWW to teach coaches my methodologies so I could guarantee that more people would have access to this experience of coaching. And me, get in there with the physique carrot, but like, let's go all the way. Let's transform. Deep, deep, deep work. Let's really transform.
Yeah, so what do I notice, Michelle, as you answer that? One, the system is just like right there. Yeah, thank you for doing that with me, by the way. It's a great demonstration. So we ask, why do you do it? You love it. You're so good at it. And right at the surface, it is, I'm addicted to it. I love serving. I love people. I feel really competent in it. Like it is a service that needs to happen. Like even as I relay that back, body's engaged. There's energy that's there. That's adrenaline and dopamine. We're witnessing it here. It's not only clear, because sometimes it may not be clear yet, but there's an impulse, there's an inertia, there's a yearning. We feel that in the body. We feel that in energetics. It may not be that it's huge at the start, but if we check in and go, I don't know, and there's a flatness or an apathy or there isn't that life force, then probably we haven't gone deep enough or we're off the mark on what the thing is. If we notice that there's way too much energy, like, I don't know, because I feel like I should, and I feel like I'm going to get in trouble if I don't, or I'm going to fail, then probably we're not clear enough on the purpose and meaning for ourselves. It may be that we're focused on what's going to happen, just too much consequence that's there. So Michelle, one, I kind of threw you under the bus there, but that discernment, that definitiveness, that life force, that energy, we want to get really clear on that, and that it's absolutely sharp, right? Why do you do what you do? Because for my family, for service, for duty. Myself, I have a very clear why. I love people. I think they're very interesting. I think it's very hard to be human. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And with the skills and the tools that I have been blessed with and worked very hard to cultivate, I have seen the impact that that can have, and it brings me huge reward and fulfillment. There is nothing I like better than that. Listen to my voice, see my face. It's there, right? The
Yeah.
body's engaged. So these are really strong cues of a why. It's something we can build over time. But the opposite of that would be, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm scared if I don't do it, or I'm kind of like flat and apathetic and there's nothing there. That might let us know that we don't have a clear why in the room. Even if it sounds good, the body's not engaged, the nervous system's not engaged. We don't have adrenaline and dopamine.
Gotcha. And I know we got to move on to the how, but I'm quickly going to interject and say, I think this is my bias, but I do feel, I think it's John Wooden. I think it's John Wooden that says like a great coach can win a good coach can win a game, but a great coach can change a life. And I feel like a lot of the times the coaching that I'm doing is pulling somebody up to what I'm seeing and letting them peek over the edge and look at a different way at seeing what's going on so that they can change how they're interpreting the feelings that they're having, the confusion, the overwhelm they might be having. I feel like I do that a lot around shows and competitions. One of the things I say all the time is like, I know it's disappointing not to win, but look at my journey, right? I lost 9 shows before I won my first pro show. And I learned so much. And that has made me the business leader that I am today. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't gone through those quote unquote failures. Now, if I had only seen the loss, I would never have been able to overcome and become better. I would have stagnated. So it's a lot of that too for coaching, not just letting somebody flounder. That's for me when you go in and you say, hey, can I lift you up here? What do you think of this viewpoint?
And right on point, as always, Michelle, you've brought us beautifully a segue into the how. We're speaking to the how right there, which is what are the things we need to do, either over a longer period, what's the metric, what's the goal, and then what are the habits that we're practicing through. We need to have those targets. Then the why, which is the energy and the inertia and the drive. We need that to actually engage and prioritize, and our nervous system to stay with a process. And then we go, well, how do we do that? Not just the what and the why, but the how is when we come up against roadblocks, when it's tougher than we thought, when we feel as though we've failed, when we don't know where to look and we're feeling overwhelmed, confused, lack of progress, disconnection. How do we engage with that process? How do we execute the practices? You're speaking to maybe the mindset realm, which is how we set up to ensure that we're not bringing in really high expectations that might not even be possible to achieve, or how we approach and build a relationship with failure, or what we may perceive as failure. Some of these can be reframes in terms of how we think, but then the other is how we're engaging coach and client to help bring in wins when the objective outside thing doesn't work as well. So what's an example of that? Someone goes for a 100-kilo squat, and today, the day, it doesn't work out. And the client goes, I failed again. I'm so frustrated with myself. I'm so upset. This is the thing. I've let my coach down. The how is going, well, what were our metrics of success? What were our metrics of progress? Have we been doing those? Awesome. Tick, tick. That's a win, 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 win. Which means the why of you consistently showing up, and you consistently practicing, and you staying with things that are really hard, you have also moved closer to being able to achieve those, which is a tick, 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 tick. So what looks like or might feel like an initial failure in the moment, we are now weaving it and leaning on what are the metrics of success. You've been doing those. What's the why? You are moving towards those. Sure, we can have a tough day. Sure, sometimes things don't happen as we would hope or wish, but we set up what success is, and therefore, what's that like? We are progressing. This is a part of the process. How do you feel about that? That's the mindset of how we engage in things, how we redirect, how we build relationship with failure. What's your sense of that, Michelle?
Love that. I'm wondering about the survival brain. And, you said repeatedly that, and I've experienced that myself, right? The survival brain rejects complexity. Like, what does it actually look like at the neurological level? And then, like, how can you check yourself? How can you systems check, flag that you're in overload? This is beyond even having a coach, so that you're more coachable and stop chasing 5 goals and pare down and get simple. Like, what's that one win that you can make? So can you talk a little bit about that? I know we're going a little bit over time, but I'd love to pull that out a little bit.
That's fine. And again, this falls under the umbrella of how, which is how we engage in hard things and how we understand that it's not linear. We can speak all day in the industry about how progress isn't linear, but then when it happens in real time and we're living in a system that feels like it's failed, or we're talking to our coach and we feel like we've dropped the ball, like, how do we understand our humanity while we're also working to grow? And a big part of that is survival reflexes, which is in certain seasons with something we call allostatic load, which is just a huge compilation of too much on the system. How we engage in a process may change month to month, week to week, based on what our capacity is. Some seasons of our life we are maintaining. Like, that is the win. And that is a huge success. Right?
Maintain your hanging on. Hanging on.
I mean, it's not sexy, right? And it's not the thing that's marketed, but maintenance, not just a maintenance phase, but just maintaining when there's a huge load of your system is one of the biggest successes that we can experience. That's part of the how, which is always evaluating where we at, what capacity is there, how do we want to engage in this thing to either damage control and to just hang on, or even better, start to be able to find wins and a different frame on what success is based on what our capacity and what our responsibilities are. So that's a part of it too, how we understand survival states and adjust accordingly to what is then still available for growth. Right. So there's 2 components. And again, we teach this in Neuroscience of Coaching, and then the system around it is being able to identify when a client, or in our case, when we are in a survival state, and that practicing habits and skills at that point, we actually press pause. Our prefrontal cortex is offline. Our system is dysregulated.
Yeah. You talked about that in the last podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't learn new things yet. So the first component of the how is, are we at the start line? Are we regulated enough? Do we have just enough capacity? Are things not overwhelming, not too overwhelming, not too confusing? And we're feeling connected to ourselves, the what and the why. Do we have just enough to start to go to B, to C, to D, to E? So part of the how is, how do we regulate to engage in the process to begin with? We can't do that. Nothing happens. And then the next piece, if we are regulated enough and we have enough capacity to practice the right pace, the right dose, then we're looking at how do we engage day to day and week to week? Like, what's the structure of the habits that we're going to practice? How do we measure those? How do we report back on those? How do we use that information to let us know that we're on track?
Beautiful. And then again, I think too of, the evolution of the coach's journey is being able to, be able to hold that nuance between, developing your skills, right? Reading the room. So that's going to mean, potentially asking questions, really combing over data, trying to understand, trying to triage what you're seeing, and then being able to get in there and take things off the plate if that's what's needed. So in those high stakes situations, that's where, like, the more expert coach can walk the client who's struggling with overwhelm through, I call it like the shoals or the alligator infested swamp, get them to the other side where they go, thank you for holding that space for me. And even better, I'm going to say better, I know that might not be a popular word, but help them to actually gain ground during hard times, so that if they're on track for a big goal, like a contest, they're able to hit that goal without spiking. How do you do that without spike? We talk about that. How does a coach not spike stress in high stakes, right? But again, we're not talking about dumbing things down. We're not talking about babying people. Women can do hard things. That I'd like to tease out a little bit before we finish.
Yeah, ultimately, communication skills, communication system, communicating the right thing at the right time in the right dose based on where the client is at, which sounds really simple. But when there's a lot in the room, we've got the what, the why, the how. We need to know that they're all operating at once. These are master coaches, but also this is the system that we built, Michelle. There are a million coaches out there that they're doing a really great job, and they've got the information that they need. But in the background, after 19 years, and this is the service and the purpose behind my life's work, is to go, all you coaches out there are doing a phenomenal job. And also, it's not your job to be a neuropsych. It's not your job to be an expert in communication, and instead you need a system that helps you with the what and the why and the how, so you can support clients with the what, the why, and the how. So communication skills and communication system, that's one of the things that we provide. But then as well, when we're looking at supporting clients in that how, in that element, it's adjusting, it's adapting, it's knowing. And I would say this is, and we don't necessarily teach this, but I am going to say this in your presence, Michelle. It's also us, whoever the facilitator is, the coach, the educator, like they need some lived experience. It's really important that the person that is supporting a client has gone through an experience themselves. It might not be the same, but they need not only the professional skills, but also the personal experience to go, I know what it's like to have very little capacity. And I know how hard that is. And I know how important for the long term it is to pull back and adjust, because we're going for the long win, not the win just today. I think there's a personal element of that, personal experience, personal struggle. Compassion comes into that, but also just trial and error. And very likely, I'd love to hear from you, Michelle, very likely master coaches have made way more mistakes in their own personal practice, like what they do not want their clients to do and do not want their clients to suffer with. And that is one of the biggest foundations. The best coaches out there have suffered, they have wrestled with things, they have overcome challenges, both personally, but as well with support and help. And in my experience in the industry, they're always the best ones, right? They have deep, deep personal insight on top of professional skills. And when you put those things together, the what, the why, the how, and the human beings behind it, that's when we win.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that wholeheartedly. We have a saying at TWW, we lead from the front, and we actually, when I first started bringing coaches on, and I would mentor them myself. This is before the coaching academy that I built. I would say, listen, you've got to do a competition. You've got to do a reverse diet. You've got to do maintenance. You've got to do all those things so you understand where the struggle will be, and you build skills and strategies yourself to get through them. And I would also ask them, you got to work with me as your coach until a certain point so that you're learning from somebody who's done it. And we're just passing along that information. So let's wrap up here. For women listening, right? How does she quickly audit her current goal using your model? What, why, how? How can she do it?
First is, what is the target? Do you have something that's very specific and very tangible? Can you write it down? Is it objective? I want to lose this amount by this date. If we don't have that, it's a very vulnerable place to start. If it's vague, we do not know if we're moving towards it. We do not know if we've achieved it, which means right from the get-go, even if it feels uncomfortable to lock into something, we don't have what we need for success. So with the what, what's the goal? Can we write it down? Is there a number? Could be performance or aesthetic based. And is there a timeline to it? That would be the first thing. If you don't have that, that's your start point. Second would be, is we're asking questions on why it's actually important. Is this meaningful for you, or is it something that someone else told you is important? How do we know? When we look at 5 kilos in 4 months, we go, what is the cost of not moving through that process? How is my system going to feel? How am I going to feel 4 months from now if I don't take action on this? And if the answer is whatever, then probably that's not your why. If it's something of going, oof, like I really feel the tension and the discomfort of another 4 months or another year like this, and I've been here for a long time and I'm spinning my wheels, and I really, really want to shift and change this, like it's impacting me, that we want to get a sense of, and not too much, but we have to be in contact with it. And then the next piece of the why is, what's the thing that we're desiring? If we were to achieve that, what would it mean? How might we feel? How might we experience ourselves? This isn't necessarily, I look better in clothes or I feel stronger under the bar. It's what that represents, which is I can go to a family event at Christmas and I feel comfortable when everyone's taking pictures. I'm not hiding on the sidelines. When I go to the beach with my child, I'm not hiding there and watching as he or she plays in the water. Like, these are really meaningful things where it's not about aesthetics. It's not about the bathing suit. It's not about the picture. It's about these deep and meaningful experiences that we want to have with people, where when these things aren't necessarily achieved for us and we aren't moving towards it, we miss out on those things. That's where we're getting clear. I desire the experience of feeling freedom and confidence to just play with my kids, to just enjoy time with my family, to not worry so much before I go on holiday and be excited for the first time, maybe in 10 years. Like, this is what we're looking for in terms of the why. We haven't been taught necessarily how to distill that down, but these are the layers that we're speaking to. So first is, what's the tangible goal? Do we have a metric? If we don't, that's your start point. The next is, why is it meaningful? Like, really meaningful. And can we get to the layer of going, it's uncomfortable for me to stay here and I really don't want to stay here anymore. And also, if I were to take action on this, I would experience these kinds of things in this way that are deeply meaningful to me and bring me purpose and feel like I'm getting more out of life. That's the second piece. We write it down. We think about it. We talk about it, but we need both. And then the third, and this is the one, call to action for anyone listening, the how is almost always going to be, especially if it's outside your skill set and it's something that's new and a little uncomfortable, the how, because it has more layers and more variables, it is working with someone who has the skill and the will. They've had a personal experience or personal experiences that they've overcome, and a clear process that they can take you through while you focus on the things you need to focus on. You don't have to hold everything in the frame. The how is the coaching process. The how is the coaching and mindset frame. Those things, generally, it's just going to be too much for you to learn and hold while you're also doing the rest. So the how component is the element where you're working with a coach. It might not even be fitness and nutrition, just working with a authority figure or a teacher or an expert to help move you through step by step to keep it from being too overwhelming, too confusing, to helping you mark out and acknowledge and feel progress, and to stay connected to the what and the why and to the coaching relationship as you go, giving the absolute best possible chance of success.
I think it's so topical now in the era of ChatGPT too, because I mean, if you need that how piece and you're relying on ChatGPT, I mean, you can get lost down a rabbit hole fast, and it has its own addiction where you keep asking questions and it goes and it goes and it goes, and you think you have this whole plan mapped out. And then you ask a question and it spits you down another direction. And now you're overwhelmed and you're going into more overwhelmed because of all these options. So having a true thinking human expert that really understands humanity, how to read the room, like all of that, has a lot of systems to throw at you, a lot of skills and strategies, and can take things literally off your plate is a big. And I'm not just selling the coaching here. It's just I feel that as a business person, when I bring in an expert, I feel all of a sudden that load, that overwhelm dissipates.
Spot on, Michelle, and I'm glad you're naming it. ChatGPT can be an excellent tool, but it only falls under the umbrella of the what. It does not mark the why and the how, which means it can be great to use in any process. I love AI tools. I think they're fantastic.
Me too. I love them.
But also knowing there are huge limitations. And the limitations when we look at this model are going, what just doesn't cut it? We need why, we need the energy, we need the inertia. And then the how, ultimately, that's communication skills and communication systems with the right prescription and diagnostics that a coach is taking you through. ChatGPT cannot do that. I'm open to having my mind changed Give it 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, but at this point, it tackles a reasonable percentage of the what.
The what? Okay, I love that.
Tends to overwhelm and confuse, but it does not tackle the why and the how. And those two are they're all equally important, but they are more sophisticated, they're more layered, and we need human contact to be able to navigate through them.
And again, a great coach can narrow things down. We don't keep asking more questions. We pause, we take a step back, we remind ourselves, what is the outcome we want? Let's get that next win. Simple, slow, focused.
Love it.
Michelle, thank you so much. I could go on forever. I always say that about my guests, but you especially so. And of course, I'm working with you along with Mom and JJ, and it's been an incredible journey. Highly recommend anyone that is a high achiever, that is wanting to up-level their skills. You know, obviously my family, we want to up-level our skills as a unit so we can enjoy more in the thick of a very busy and successful life. And it's been fabulous working with you. So I'm so glad to have you back on the show. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Michelle. That was super fun. Thanks so much.